and get started here. For those of you wondering if that was an important phone call, that was my daughter. She wanted to call and cry because she's graduating in a week from college and she's not ready yet. So that's probably why she's moving home in a couple weeks. So anyway, I'm sure she's taking a gap year, by the way, because she's going on again. So anyway, welcome today. We're glad that you're with us for this update. It should not take the whole hour by any means, but when we set these up, we didn't know how long they would take for each one of them. So we'll impart the information we have for you today and then let you go. Let you ask some questions too if you have those. So I do have a little bit of additional information besides just map growth information for today. And so I just want to get that out there. Having an opportunity to talk with you, I was like, yeah, there's a couple other things we should probably let them know too. So I have a couple other pieces as well. The first thing is just about this year, wrapping everything up. Yeah, I know there's lots of red on that, but I just wanted everybody to have this, and we're going to send this out again later today, just as a reminder that deadlines are coming up. We're quickly approaching the end of this, and we are going to be done here soon. So for most things, right, May 7th is the last day to get anything done. The one exception to that is for NSCAS General, the phase 1 pilot, and for the science field test, you can enter not tested code and accommodation information into the system up until May 10th. So you get a little bit longer to take care of that. But overall, most everything needs to be done and in the system by next Friday. So those are quickly approaching. The last statement there is very true. Getting this work done before those deadlines means it's much less likely that Maggie Sis has to contact you over the summer, which is usually a good thing. So if you can get those done, get those entered as best you can before testing wraps up. This one's a little bit more concerning when you see it here. So we found out yesterday there was a key error in one of the ACT versions. It was specifically an accommodated version from the first test window. And that key error is making it so 132 students in Nebraska will have their results amended. So that wasn't caught until after the scoring had already happened. Those students will get a new amended report. Some students are going to have an increase in score. Some students are going to have a decrease in score. And most of those are up 1 or down 1 point because of that the key error. There are some students in the nation, I don't know which students necessarily, some kids got a 2-point bump up because of that key error. So those families and schools are going to receive mail and amended reports from ACT directly if you were affected or if one of your students was affected by that key error. Also, if students had sent their scores to a higher ed institution, those higher ed institutions will receive an updated score as well. So the other part of this is we want you to know this as soon as possible. So as soon as districts, as soon as ACT gets those amended in the online system, you're going to receive, if you were impacted by that, if your district was impacted with any of those scores, you're going to receive an email from Maggie with the students impacted. And then you would be able to go online and see how that changed probably before you get the snail mail version of those letters coming out to you from ACT. Okay. Anybody have any questions about that? Feel free to come off mute and I can answer any questions about that. That's one we just found out yesterday and I thought it was better to tell you up front. Obviously, only 132 students. Some districts are more impacted by that than others. Obviously, by when you tested matters a lot in this. anybody have any questions on that?
So when you say updated online, you mean in the system where we can go now and find the scores, they're going to update it in there as well?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And we're going to send, as soon as they get updated in that online system, we will send that email so you can go and check those. The scores won't be in the email, just the students impacted by that when you receive it. So then you'd be able to go on in there and see what the changes are. And then the snail mail version of all that would come to you after that. And then any further reporting that happens, that will be corrected. Those scores will be corrected in for any of the other reporting pieces from ACT. Okay. So this was as of about 30 minutes ago for specifically for NSCAS General, the phase 1 pilot and everything. 99% scheduled. That means that they're either online or have a not tested code already put into it, which is great. There's only about a little less than 3,000 of the tests that either don't have a test scheduled or don't have a not tested code. Of those that have online tested or online scheduled test, we are about 97% done. You can see the percentages there based on subject area. Once again, those percentages are of online tests. So right now, there's about 21,000 test events that have not tested codes. We expect that to go up as you're cleaning up everything and taking care of everything. So those numbers are going to fluctuate a little bit. We're obviously interested in seeing how that all pans out with COVID and all of those things. There's about 1% of tests that are in progress. And last I checked, there was less than 7,000 tests not started yet that had been scheduled for online testing. We imagine that some of those are going to probably move over to the not tested codes as well. So great job, everybody. I thank you very much. Thank you for all of your work this year and dealing with all the other crazy stuff that you had to deal with besides testing. I would appreciate it if you would extend our thanks, not only for all the work around the assessments, but also all the work that everybody's done across the state in this last year. I've done a lot of national meetings in the last year since the pandemic hit. And what I can tell you is Nebraska and Nebraska educators are doing a wonderful job for our kids, for our communities. And I can't be more proud to be a Nebraska educator. So thank you for all you've done in the past year. Statewide assessment dates. We sent this information out last month, but I thought I'd just go ahead and put it in this presentation again, just in case you didn't see it or you're wondering where it is. Rob has a question. I can stop there. Yes, Rob.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Probably other people are probably dealing with this too. And this is kind of a comment, but kind of a question. But in LPS ESU 18, we're still dealing with the NWA app OS 90 snafu. So we have 5,000 student devices that won't do the NWA app right now, and we can't back them up. So we're waiting for NWA to release a fix. So just so you know, some of those tests that aren't done yet, we're waiting for a fix from them to get those done. And we're hoping the clock doesn't run out on us. Yeah,
absolutely. And we're paying attention to that. I really wish Google would not release new OSs in the middle of testing, right? Or if they were going to, they would give us a little more heads up when they were going to do that. So yeah, we are keeping an eye on that. That is a big percentage of the tests that we have left. I think that it may be impacted there. So we are keeping an eye on that. So thank you, Rod.
And Jeremy, another thing about the not scheduled tests, NWEA called me this morning about, they said it looked like we had a lot of unscheduled tests. And at the same time, I had gotten a call from a school where they're showing like 30 kids that when you run your report, it says unscheduled. However, those kids are clearly in testing sessions, either completed or with the not tested code. So I know they were working on that. So
Yeah, absolutely. And when I say those percentages are not exact, right? So I was just trying to give an overall shout out actually, because the numbers look really good in my opinion of all the students that we have tested and the percentages we have left. Those get cleaned up quite a bit at the end, and some of them go away because they, you know, whatever for whatever reasons. And so I just go about your normal activities, and I'm sure most of it will take care of itself. So just know there is some wiggle in all of that.
Jeremy,
Yeah.
another thing that happens that we just found out, and maybe you all already know this too, but we also loaded our MAP rosters yesterday. And so all of our alternate assessment students that we
Yeah.
very nicely did not have in the NSCAS system all went in.
Yeah.
And so we had to assign them all the schedule. You had to do it. So
Yeah, if you wanted to put a not tested code in there, and Maggie does a great job of cleaning all of that stuff up afterwards. Any of and tries to take care of most of that herself before she asks questions of you guys to try to clean all of that up. So we know that that's going to happen, and that's going to be part of
if
what
anybody else hasn't loaded yet and you have foresight to not put those kids on the roster, then
Right.
FYI.
Yeah. And if they are, those are actually pretty easy to clean up when we have scores and alternate that we can just get rid of in general, and vice versa.
I wanted to piggyback on Rob's question. Sorry to push us back, but we have gotten a couple of questions from a couple of schools that said, do you think if we can't get this technology thing solved, the state will extend the window? And my response is, God, I hope not. So do you have any thoughts about all of that? Like what a solution might be if there's not fixed next week?
I don't know yet. I've been looking at options. Right now, the issue, there's not a lot of good options if we don't get a fix for that. So we're going to continue to explore it, and then we'll have to do like we always do and figure out what's fair and equitable, and, you know, do our best. So,
I mean, we have MAP testing scheduled for next week too.
Right.
And there's all the end of year curriculum stuff. And so I don't know, there's just not much time left.
Correct. Yep. I understood. So, okay. And we will swing back around on that one with LPS too. So any other things while we're here at this spot? Okay. So those assessment dates, once again, they're in an email from last month. If you're looking for them, the dates are there for you. Once again, the MAP growth dates, which continues to be optional for districts next year. And those are the default windows. There is some flexibility in those, just so you know that. NDE, specifically about the NSCAS growth winter pilot, we are working on the guidance around that. You're going to see this in this email or in this presentation about 3 times. So next month we will have the guidance around participation for the winter pilot and what that means and what that looks like. So you'll see that soon. There's the ACT dates as well for you again. And now we're to NSCAS growth.
None.
So here we go. So this is a new graphic that we had put together kind of to kind of show this roadmap for NSCAS growth. I like it quite a bit because it kind of shows the this year and the next 2 years, and puts the research studies into it as well. And I think one of the things that it shows pretty well is that next year is really still a transition year. And I know a lot of people, myself included, wanted us to be fully through this transition as we get into 21, 22. But obviously the pandemic and had impacts all over the place. And that includes in this transition as well. So if you look at the next year specifically, around the winter pilot and then the through year in the spring. There's a couple of different research studies going on, and they're really to validate the test model that we have going. It's a kind of a reminder that this is something that nobody else has in place at this point in time, although a lot of other states are interested in it, to try to move away from just a summative test, and to have better information coming throughout the year. And so that focus on what we're trying to do within next year. So once again, to provide educators and students really an opportunity to test with this new system and to gather feedback, and really also to validate the data that we're gathering this spring. As several of you have pointed out, and if you think about it, the data from this year is suspect for multiple reasons. Not that it's not good at all, but we have the pandemic going on. We also have a portion of our students that is not representative, that are not going to test, a much bigger portion than we typically have. And so any data that we get from this year has to be validated as we move forward, including the linking study that we have planned, that was originally planned for last year. So as we're going through this, it really is, next year is really about settling everything down, verifying everything as we move forward, and getting through and doing this transition. We are going to be able to do accountability with the results from next year. We believe that. We're obviously checking all that data as we move forward. If that changes based on any of the information that we get, obviously we would use that to inform decisions as we go forward. This slide really kind of shows the objectives for the pilot, and the caveats for this, right? So we're not done with the transition. Results are not, should not be used for high stakes decision making. Everything for the reporting piece is not going to be done. It's really hard to say what will be complete and what will not be complete. And the timing might not be what you would expect. For all of those reasons, districts and schools using Map Accelerator or other products are encouraged to use Map Growth next year. And I kind of even went further a little bit for NDE's recommendation. And I think this is one of the big pieces of new information that I have for you today, is that we are recommending, if your district relies upon Map Growth data, that you continue to give Map Growth during next year as you normally would. I know many of us were hoping that as we were getting into this transition, we could eliminate one of those. That's part of the whole point, especially in spring, is that we only give one test. But I don't think we're not there yet. I don't think we're not where we need to be yet. And so I do not want to risk any of your internal processes. So as you're planning for next year, if you rely on that Map Growth information for whatever it is, whatever processes you have in your district, we recommend giving those Map Growth tests next year. Like I said, in May, we will provide participation guidance about NSCAS growth pilot. So the question is, I had a question down here that says, do you mean that we will do both MAP and NSCAS in the winter? If you want to give Map Growth in the winter, because you rely on those pieces every winter when you give that test, I would recommend that at this time. How you're going to participate in the winter pilot is still not determined. I will have that information. We're going to bring that back to an advisory group and look at it. Whether that means everybody's participating, half the students are participating. I know what participation levels we need to get the data we need to keep moving forward. Do we try to just do a representative sample? Do we do something else, right? So there's all kinds of options. Or do we just make it optional and hope we get enough students that are representative? I think that's a little bit more risky. And so that group will be advising us as we make that final decision, and we'll have that for you at the May update, so you know exactly what choices you have or don't have as we go into that winter pilot. It continues to be is some frequently asked questions that I thought we could go ahead and talk about a little bit. Will map growth, will NSCAS growth provide a RIT score? Absolutely. If you're going to get a RIT score for this year's results as well. It is based on a linking study that we're currently doing with this testing season between the NSCAS item bank and the map growth item bank. That means that currently it's a linked RIT score, so it's not a perfect match. Eventually, it can be a much closer match as we move forward. This question, if the students take the two tests, are they going to get the same RIT score? Well, no. And the chances of a student getting the same RIT score, even if they take the same test in a day, is really not very likely. There's always some amount of measurement error in there. There's information, from one day to the next. There's the student's disposition and the experiences that they have impacts on those. And any instruction obviously might have impacts on testing from one to the other, right? So that and the test designs were for different purposes. That being said, are they comparable? Absolutely. One of the things I know many of you are going to be checking is comparing how close those RIT scores are between NSCAS and the spring map growth. If you're going to do that this year, you're going to be looking at overall, and just let me say this, you shouldn't be looking for an exact match. That's not going to happen. You should be looking to, are they within a reasonable range of those two scores, right? How soon will you get winter and spring map or NSCAS growth scores? So NSCAS growth in the spring will be in that actually all for the winter and the spring. Right now we're saying within 72 hours. The goal is ultimately within 24 hours, right? To be able to turn that around in that same type of window that you currently expect map growth. The caveat on the previous slide or the previous couple of slides really says those timelines are still in flux. They might be a little bit longer as we move into those in the transition year of next year. Ultimately, they'll be within those 24-hour mark. When will you receive the spring scores? I don't have the date currently in front of me for spring scores, so I'm going to put that out there and see if somebody saves me and helps me find that spring score date. When you'll have those in your hands. So we'll see if somebody comes up with the answer for me here in a second. Yeah, so that last question, will they be comparable, the RIT score? Absolutely. And the further into the transition we get, the more tight we know that will be and accurate will be between those two scores. Couple of pieces of information as we move forward. We have next month, we have another update. We're going to focus on test management and proctoring, those types of things. Also that participation guidance, like I said, about the winter pilot is coming up. In June, we're going to do a update about test design. We're going to, kind of pop the hood and look underneath there and see how all of that works on the design of the test as we go forward. And then administrator days, a lot more information is going to be ready at that time. Yes, administrator days for sure will be available via webinar or Zoom, and that will be recorded and put on the website as soon as we can afterwards. Then you'll be able to share that if you want as well. We know that we probably have a full session, like a session for everybody at one time for some of that information. And we also are going to have other communication resources, including some shorter videos about the topics that we've covered here recently, for instance, test management or test design. So if you want to share those with other people in the district, what we're trying to do is make sure that districts and schools have the information available to them, and they can share that with others as they go forward. So we're trying to make sure that that is all available. I know Administrator Days is in person this year, but I believe they're planning on also having remote options for all of that as well. So Administrator Days, anybody know the dates off the top of their head? I should say day, right? Because we know that NDE Day will be a specific day. It's the last Wednesday of
28th.
28th. There we go. So Wednesday, the 28th will be the day that those online presentations happen. And so this is another piece that I want to warn you about, that it's coming up here very soon. So the last couple of years we've had choices for around ACT and what additional services districts could choose. ACT is discontinuing the AOP, or the ACT online prep. So that will no longer be a choice as we move forward into next year. Districts will continue to have a choice between pre-ACT, that you can give that to juniors, to sophomores in the fall or the spring, juniors in the fall, or you can do pre-ACT secure. That is a new offering. It is only available for spring and for sophomores. A couple of things about that pre-ACT secure. So here are the windows for pre-ACT, the traditional pre-ACT. That is not an official title. It's still just called the pre-ACT, but I feel the need to differentiate the two of them. The spring 2022 secure pre-ACT window has not been determined yet. We hope to have that soon, and so that might impact some of your decisions. I also prepared this. This is my language, not ACT's language, because they don't have it for me yet. So traditional pre-ACT is non-secure. Students and staff get to keep and analyze questions and responses. Students and district get to keep those test booklets and those responses, right? So they know how students responded. They know what the questions are. Those can be used in the classroom. Those can be used for item analysis, all those types of things. For the secure, the processes are much more logistically similar to NSCAS ACT. You're going to order materials. You have to have them back by a certain time. Materials are returned, and nobody gets to see those items or those responses, just like the ACT. It's a secure version of the pre-ACT secure. So obviously pre-ACT has a window. Those are bigger windows, and you can choose when you want to administer that. Schedules are less flexible for pre-ACT secure. Yeah, I think it's a good question, Bethany. The advantage might be, right, for ACT, pre-ACT secure is that, well, and let me give a little bit of history. So another state, not Nebraska, asked for pre-ACT secure so that they could calculate growth between sophomore year and junior year, and then put that in their accountability system. That's why it was developed as a secure version, because the pre-ACT traditional non-secure version, a lot of people had questions about using that for that purpose. So the data that comes back, what I would say is it's easier to use. There's less of a lift, right? So if you want to take full advantage of pre-ACT, the traditional version, it requires the district or teachers to do additional work, right? If you want to dig into those questions and into that information. Now that might be the whole point, that you want to do that, and that's fine. It also might be that you're not doing those things and just getting the results back in a very static way that looks much like what ACT is, is a better option for you, and that's what you want to do. It also might be that you would really like to see map growth. I have no idea why I said map right there. you would like to see us as in the state of Nebraska, use pre-ACT secure for growth, and therefore you want to advocate for that. Currently, there is not a plan as to when or even if we would implement that growth at this time. At high school level for the current accountability system, there is no growth measure. Any districts that choose to participate in pre-ACT secure would therefore be used in an analysis to see if it's possible and how that growth measure would look for high schools moving forward. And so I don't know that you would say that there's advantages or not necessarily. There's differences between the two. Did you get a question? I believe accommodations, and Iris, if you know this, and maybe we don't know this, accommodations for pre-ACT secure are similar to ACT. Is that correct, Iris?
We haven't had a definite answer on that yet,
Okay.
but it probably will be some kind of process. So accommodations is going through a whole new reorganization. So we've yet to see what that's exactly going to look like.
Okay.
But I would say it's probably likely that there would be some kind of request for accommodation because you'd have to get different materials.
Yeah, I would be surprised if there's not. To me, that's a good news type of thing that they're looking at the processes around accommodations. For all of us, I think there's some room for improvement there, but also scary because things changing is always scary. We will try to get an answer for that question as we move forward. Other questions about, well, let me do this here really quick. So before the end of the school year, as we have the last couple of years, we're going to send a DAC email detailing the decisions, including the language of the survey and everything. The survey will be sent to superintendents to make a decision or to enter that decision. We're asking every district to respond. It is not the final word on that because at the beginning of next year, shortly after Administrator Days, we're going to ask you to verify that change. Some of you might be wondering why we do that. We do that partially because leadership changes over the summer happen frequently, right? Between whether that's at the superintendent level or whether it's a building principal or whoever's making those decisions, that is possible to change. And we see that from year to year. What we would ask is if you are making that decision before you leave and you know there's a change in leadership, we really ask that you pass that plan, what your plan is, on to the people that are going to be coming into the district so that they know. And that as we move forward into next year, you respond to those, the first survey this year, and that opportunity to verify that at the beginning of next year. That is done so that ACT has some information about what materials they need to print. So that's important to make sure they have the numbers of materials that we need. So that's why we do that. Also, if you're going to test in the fall for pre-ACT, we need to know that and get that information entered into the system so that you're ready to go as soon as possible to get that done in the fall. Okay. I know there was more probably not as much NSCAS growth information as you wanted, but like I said, I had an opportunity to talk to you, so I thought I would share what I had.
Jeremy, I have a question about ACT, and I did talk with Iris about this yesterday, but you know, with all of our other assessment systems, we can run reports, download data files that show all the entered codes, not tested. For ACT, I am struggling with how to track if people have entered all of those state use questions. I mean, I know there's only 3, but it's so many kids. I can't find a way to, you know, check if they entered all the kids who didn't have permission to do
Right.
the EOS, you know, and then there's no way to check, and it's so
just
many
the tracking
kids
in general is not as as useful or as helpful as it could be.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One, that's good that you shared it with Iris. I will continue to advocate for those things in the committees and the opportunities that I have. You're not the only one to have concerns about that. So we will continue to push that forward as we go. So that's a good, thank you. Those types of things are always helpful as we continue to advocate for improved systems.
Jeremy,
And
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
go ahead.
One other question about MAP and NSCAS growth and all that. And, you know, everybody wants our budgets, and I just didn't know is there any discussion of, is NDE continuing to pay for MAP growth as you did this year, or?
yeah.
Should,
Actually, that's a really good question because I had that in my notes to put in this presentation and I forgot. So I apologize for that. Yeah, so NDE intends, and I really need a slide for this. NDE intends to pay for K through 2 and 9-10 MAP growth for the next 3 years. That is dependent on contracts and all of those pieces, but that is our intention, to pay for K through 2 and 9-10 MAP growth for the next 3 years if a district wants.
great.
And 3 through 8 for next year, correct?
And 3 for 8, yeah, 3 through 8 for next year as well, yes.
Budgets make me very literal.
Yeah, I get that, right? Yeah, 3 through 8 for next year is in there too. I'm sorry. That I thought that one was. I thought you knew that one. That was yeah.
I
But
do
good
know
question.
it, but I
That's
also
good
asked.
clarification. Good clarification.
Can I ask, I was just going to ask back to ACT, do you know if it's going to be still the expectation that we get those parent permissions for the, you know what I'm
Yeah,
talking
so
about?
with the institution of my ACT, we have to go back and re-examine whether we're going to need parent consent going forward or not. So I'm going to have to go back to the lawyers again, and I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of fun with the lawyers at NDE, ACT, and US DOE to try to figure out if we need to continue to do that or not. My thought is because they have to use my ACT, there's really no need for additional parental consent at that point in time. I'm not sure what the lawyers will say.
Would there be, I know you don't know this for sure, but if we could know it by school start, it would be helpful because we try to include that with
Yeah.
beginning of the year stuff.
We actually need it by early August because we included in the census form that we send out electronically to parents.
That's what I just said too. We start school in
Yeah.
August.
Like-
So what I would tell you is if we don't have the answer, I would just go ahead and do it because it's not going to hurt you to have it, right? But I understood, and it would be better if we didn't. If we don't need it, it'd be better if we didn't have to include another form. Absolutely. Will pre-ACT eventually be used for accountability? We don't know that, right? So nobody's determined if we are going to do that in the future or not. There are some people that are advocating for that because there is no growth measure at high school. I know that there are others that would push back on that because they really like the pre-ACT the way it is and the information they get from that. Actually, I don't know anybody that would not want a growth measure at high school if we had a good growth measure at high school, but most people maybe don't want another test either. So, you know, and so right now that hasn't been determined if we'll eventually do that or not. Other questions? You guys always got so many good questions. You really do.
Would we get any more information about the pre-ACT secure before we make a decision about our option for next year?
There's not a ton of information, so it is a brand new offering. It depends on what information you need. We do have some additional things. If there's specific questions you have, letting us know as soon as possible, and we can try to get those, and we'll include all of that information in the survey and email that goes out. But if
Okay.
you have specific questions that are maybe you're trying to make a decision, you should let us know as soon as possible.
The main one would probably be the date, because we give the pre-ACT and the ACT on the same date. So if they're
Yeah.
not going to be flexible with the window,
Right.
that would probably make the decision for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that makes a lot of sense. So that is a specific request that I have made, is that that whatever the dates are, that they overlap at least one of our windows. But they have not made a determination because we're not the only state, right? So I have pushed for that date, and if we have it, I will let you know when we send it out. If I don't know it, we'll be upfront about that as well. But I understand that for many, that is a kind of a deal breaker potentially, that they wouldn't want to do, even think about the pre-ACT secure if it's not overlapping on those dates. Thank you for the question.
I think for us being in a small district, it's actually, we do our pre-ACT at the same time as our ACT. So for those of us in small districts, it'll be a huge headache to have to do them all at the same time with scheduling.
Oh, to have to do them. Yeah, I don't know that it would have to be necessarily, but understood. Yeah, there's limited, if you don't have enough staff or room, that can play havoc on both sides, even small or in large districts. I know that can, I know we heard from one district this year that tried to do them both on the same day, and we're like, that was too much chaos for one day. So
Yeah, we don't usually start our junior high testing till we're done with ACT, pre-ACT, because it's just, we
yeah,
don't have the room or the staff to do
Sure.
all of it. So
yeah, and that makes sense. Flexibility is what we want, right? Is so to do it on the same day if you want to, but not if you don't.
As far as I understand, it'll be similar to the ACT. Well, we'll have options for test dates. It'll be like the ACT, you know, this is the Tuesday you can test. These will be the 2 or 3 Tuesdays you can test. So, but we haven't had a definite information on what those dates are going to be. But like Jeremy said, we're really pushing to have those
Yeah,
within our
we want
window.
that to, and I understand that, Bethany. Yeah, I get that's not ideal for some of the schools, right? That so it would, we're not advocating for that to be a requirement, but it to be an option for them, for people to do it the same day. Other questions, concerns? Absolutely. Your questions always make us better. Always. So thank you for asking them. If that is it, I think we'll go ahead and end today, and hopefully we'll see you back next month. If you have any needs as we go forward, please let us know as we're wrapping up everything in this next week. We thank you for all that you do and your time today. So thank you.